Going to be looking at 4C and 4D. So 4C and 4D is really focusing on a parabola, but it's flipped on its side. So what we learned in chapter 3, everything that we learned will apply here. So, but instead of having y equals x squared, we're focusing on y squared equals x. We just changed the x and y around. This also connects into the square root function, which is y is equal to the square root of x. Because this is then going to be giving us a positive and also a negative. So we're going to talk about it. So just here, I wanted to mention, um, it's it's going to look identical to what we've already done. It's just flipped on its x, which means the origin when there's no transformation of y squared equals x is just going to be at 0, 0. First thing I would do is looking at the original equation of a quadratic, and I'm just changing where my x is and where my y is to come up with that equation of transformation. Let's have a look. So with vertical shift, we're really just looking at what is happening to my y. So that is in the brackets here. In this case here, it is saying that we are moving down by 3. So that's where the origin is at the moment, at -3. There is no horizontal shift because there's nothing next to it. So we can see the shape is still the same, and everything else is going to be identical to what we've already done. If we look here, we've got horizontal shift, which is um, showing here on what is happening to x. To make this 0, um, x must be -1, and that's where it's shifted over to -1. Let's go at sketching this graph. So the first thing is we need to look at the turning point. The turning point of this graph is we're looking at y take away 2 there. So how do I make that part 0? Y must be positive 2. So my turning point currently is going to be right here on 2. There is, oops, I did a mistake, right here on 2 on the y-axis. There is no horizontal shift there. So straight away also we can see that there's no reflection. So I know that my graph is going to look like this. I haven't drawn it on yet because I still have intercepts to look at. The next part is we need to look at the x-intercepts. Now, to find the x-intercepts, the first thing I need to do is make y equal 0. If I do that, I've got 0 take away 2 squared equals x. So that gives me -2 squared, which is 4. So x must be 4. I'm going to label the point when x is 4, y is 0, and when x is 0, y is 2. So I've got everything I need. And now I'm just going to draw my graph. Slightly sharper than it should be, but that is how it's going to look. Let's look at this next question. Y squared is equal to 3 in brackets x minus 4. So to start off with here, nothing is happening with the y, which means I'm not going to have any vertical shift of my turning point. But I do have something occurring with my x. So with my x, it's saying that I've got x take away 1 in brackets. So that means my x has to move one unit in the positive direction. So I've got this right here. I also know that there's no reflection, so my graph is going to look like this, which means I don't have any y-intercept to find, and I've already got my x-intercept. This means I do need some more points to make sure I'm putting in the dilation correctly. So I'm just going to pick um, for, I'll pick 4 to help me. So all I'm going to do is rewrite my equation and make x 4. I'm going to solve it. 4 take away 1 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So I've got y squared is equal to 9, which that means y must be 3. And it'll be positive and negative. So that means when I'm at 4, I'm going to have positive 3 here, and I'm going to go down to negative 3. Now I've got enough information to be able to draw my graph. Make sure that you do label them appropriately, so 4, 3 and 4, negative 3. So this next question, let's have a go, and it says y squared plus 2y is equal to. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to factorize my left-hand side. So I can see that I've got a y in common. So I'll have y plus 2 is equal to x. This shows me that I'm going to have two y-intercepts. One intercept is going to be at y is 0, and the second intercept that I'm going to have is going to be when y is equal to negative 2. So straight away, I've got 2 points I'm just going to label 0 and 0. And when x is 0, y is negative 2. The second part that I need to know is my turning point. Now, we always know that if we've got 2 points, the turning point is going to be the halfway point. So I'm just going to look at y is negative 1 and just substitute that into my equation. Negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 will give me my x value. Negative 1 squared is 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. That means x must be negative 1. So when y is negative 1, x is negative 1. And that gives me enough points to be able to draw my graph. So this next question is y squared take away 4y is equal to x take away 2. So the first part that I'm going to do is get x by itself. So I'm just going to rewrite this as y squared take away 4y plus 2 is equal to x. Now I'm just going to, I can use complete the square, or I'm able just to factorize. So let's use complete the square and put it in turning point form, which means I'm really looking at what is half of b, and I'm going to add, and then I'm going to subtract them. So b here is negative 4. So I'm going to be putting in y squared take away 4y. I'm going to be adding first negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So I'm adding negative 2 squared, and then I'm taking away negative 2 squared plus 2 is equal to x. The next part is I'm going to use the perfect square rule. So the perfect square rule gives me y take away 2 squared. And then I'm going to simplify this. Negative 2 squared is 4, so it'll be negative 4 plus 2 equals x. And then I've got negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. So x will equal y minus 2 squared, take away 2. So we're doing exactly what we've done before. This gives me my turning point. So my turning point will be when y is 2, x is going to be negative 2. The next part is I need to work out my intercepts. So to start off with, I will look at my x-intercept. Now my x-intercept means y will be 0. So I will just go, I'll do it up the top, x is equal to 0 take away 2 squared, take away 2. I will then solve that. 0 take away 2 is -2. -2 squared is 4. 4 take away 2 is 2. So I've got it right here on 2, and I'll label that when x is 2, y is 0. The second part is getting our y-intercepts. Now, for the y-intercepts, x must be 0. So I'm just going to make x 0, and I'm going to take the 2 to the other side, and that will become 2 is equal to y take away 2 squared. The next step is I'm going to square root, but remember the square root, that gives me a positive and negative answer, and then I'm going to add 2. So y is going to be positive and negative square root 2 plus 2. Now, it's hard to graph with that, so just put it into your calculator to check what it is as a decimal to be as accurate as possible. But if I do the positive of the square root 2, it will give me 3.41, so approximately here. And if I do the negative, it will be 0.58. Oops, wrong area. Here. And now I can join them together. Just make sure as you are graphing, you are labeling every point. So I'm just going to put them both down. X is 0, and this is positive square root 2 plus 2, and 0, and it's -2 plus 2. Likewise, my turning point is x is -2 or base 2. So please make sure you label everything. Now, this connects into having a square root. So we're going to look at our square root functions. So with our square root functions, it's just meaning that we've got two parts of our equation. So one is we've got y is equal to square root x, and the other one would be y is equal to negative square root x. Now, if we want a reflection, we are going to have y is equal to square root being a negative in there, and that's just straight away then going to reflect it over the y-axis. And likewise again, if we put a negative on the outside of the square root, it's just going to be on the underneath part as well. So be mindful of what those negatives are and what does it mean in the context. So we are going to look at some of this, but with this square root function of y equals square root x plus 2, it's identical to what I've just gone over. It's just moving it as a vertical translation up by 2 spots. And we can't have a negative square root, so that's why it's stopping at that turning point. We're only getting half of a parabola, so be mindful of them. Likewise, with a horizontal translation, it's inside that square root. We can't get a negative, so what makes it 0? X must be -3, that is our starting point, which is our turning point. Okay, so let's look at this next question. We're going to sketch the corresponding graph. Given that the x intercepts when they exist, the set of x values for which the rule is defined, and the set of y values. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at where my turning point is. So straight away here, it's got +4, which means I've got a vertical translation to where 4 is, and then I've got a horizontal shift of 3, because that's what makes my square root 0. So that means I go across to where 3 is, and that is my starting point. Now there is a reflection. Reflection right here, which means my graph is going to be going the bottom half. So based on where this is, I know that there is not going to be a y-intercept, but I will find a x-intercept somewhere. I might not be able to draw it on here, but I'll double check anyway. So this is what the graph should look like. Now to find a x-intercept, we need to make y 0. So all I'm doing is going 0 is equal to negative square root x minus 3 plus 4. And I'm just going to solve this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take away 4 on both sides. And that gives me negative 4 is equal to negative square root x minus 3. The next part, I'm just going to cancel out the negatives and then power each side by 2. So that will give me 16 is equal to x minus 3. And finally, I'm just going to add 3. So the x-intercept will be 19. I should have technically drawn my graph a bit bigger. Let's look at one more question. So we've got y is equal to negative the square root of 5 minus x. So the first thing I'm going to do is look for the turning. So the first thing, I'll look at this part here, the two colors. I've got 5 take away x. So what does x need to be to make my square root 0? In this case here, it needs to be 5. So straight away, I'm just going to put a dot on 5. I've got nothing on this outside here, so which means I'm not going to have any vertical shift. Now I need to look at the reflection. So straight away on the outside, we've got a negative. So that means there's going to be a reflection in the x-axis. So just looking at that, we've got this group. Then I can see I've got a negative inside of the x, which means I'm going to have a reflection in my y-axis, and it's going to look like this. So this straight away tells me I'm going to have a x-intercept somewhere. Y-intercept somewhere. So to work out the y-intercept, I'm going to need to make x is equal to 0. So I'll put y is equal to negative square root 5 take away 0. 5 take away 0 is just 5. Now, if I've got negative square root 5 and I put that into the calculator, it's going to give me approximately negative 2.24. The negative 2.2 will be about here, and that allows me to graph approximately. I'm going to make sure I label my 2 points. So my first point is when x is 5, y is 0, and the second point is when x is 0, I've got negative square root 5. I do encourage you to write your points as